With me on the program now, the Shadow Agriculture Minister, Joel Fitzgibbon. Thank you for your time.
It's a pleasure.
What do you need to see out of this agriculture white paper?
Well, obviously I have to be careful to qualify everything I say. I haven't seen the white paper yet, but if the newspaper reports are correct and if my intelligence is correct, there will be a lot of disappointed people around. We've been almost 2 years waiting for this agriculture white paper, and all we got really was something that could have been written almost 2 years ago. There is no big picture, there's no strategic guidance. All we really got was a compilation, or a grab bag of promises, some fine, some good, some not so good, and many just on the never never.
So some of those ones that surely would be welcomed, like the farm management deposits changes, farmers surely would be happy to see those.
FMDs are fantastic. I think they might have even been a Labor creation initially. I've been calling for that for a long time. We've now got farmers in their 4th year of drought, and yet it's taken the government this long to act on what is probably the only effective pre-drought measure, drought preparation measure, I've seen in my time in public offices. That's a good thing, but it gets pretty tough after that. But what we really need was a big, high-level strategic vision guiding the sector, setting signals to investors, letting people know where the government wants to produce or direct our natural resources, into the areas where the return is highest, attracting foreign investment. The government's doing just the opposite by putting roadblocks in the way of foreign investment. There's nothing on sustainability, not surprisingly, because sadly sustainability wasn't within the terms of reference. There was nothing on a varying climate, and sustainable profitability will come by lifting our productivity and making our land use practices more sustainable. Now, the document is entirely absent, as I understand it, on those questions. So that's a very big omission, as is, by the way, skills. We need human resources, we need skills, education and training and participation. We need another generation of farmers on the farm, and there appears to be nothing in this document which addresses those issues. That will be a great disappointment to the farming community.
So if we break down a few of those things, skills, what sort of things would you suggest should have been in?
Well, we need to look at what farming is going to look like in the future. That's what a white paper should be about, planning long term and identifying the skills we will need in the future. Some of those skill sets don't change, but there are many new skill sets as we move to more sustainable farming practices, for example, and higher tech farming, the use of satellites and other technology on farm. Now, there was an expectation that the government would put a great emphasis on that and ensure that there are the training courses available, that people can access the right courses in university. I was in South Australia only yesterday, where of course horticulture is a very big sector, and you can't do a horticulture course either at university or at TAFE in South Australia. Now obviously that's a problem that's been around for a while, but you might have thought that 2 years almost in the making and looking into the future, that issue may have been addressed in this white paper.
What about sustainability? Anything suggested? Any suggestions, I should say, from your side?
Well, people like to deny a changing climate, or climate change, if you like, but it is with us, and most farmers, if not all farmers, recognise that. The only debate is around what's causing it.
But to address policy can't change.
Oh, of course it can.
That on its own.
We've used this should have been a strategic document, which used market-based policies to produce market-based signals. And we've done that in water, for example, in the Murray-Darling Basin, which means that our precious water resources go where they produce the highest return. When are we going to do that in soils, for example? This government likes to talk about water, and that's very important, but you need both water and soils to produce food, most foods at least. And there's no talk about soil quality. In this, by the way, this year of the soil, International Year of the Soil. So there's no strategic vision here. A compilation of spending promises, many of which are overstated. I mean, we've got more money going to what is a failed drought policy, but the headline figure is inflated by the fact that they value the total price of the loan. So
this is the concessional loan.
Concessional loan for drought-affected farmers. So if I lend you $1 million at a higher interest rate than what I pay as a government, then I'm putting that $1 million towards what I say I'm spending in this package. Well, I'm not spending that at all. So they deliberately inflated the package. They're also talking in water infrastructure about $600 million maybe, but I'm told that most of that money will be expected to come from the states. State governments, which of course just simply don't have the money. And most of this stuff is on the never-never. The additional R&D money, for example, is well beyond the forwards, and therefore doesn't offset the money that's already been cut in R&D, in the CSIRO, in our CRCs, in our rural RDC, the list goes on. So, you know, there were some good things there, but you know, are only catching up on what we've lost in recent years, and others, of course, are on the never-never.
What about the Agriculture Commissioner and the trade councillors that will go overseas? Are they welcome?
Trade councillors are very good news, and something else I've been promoting. You know, we've got free trades agreements commenced by Labor, completed by this government. That's a good thing. But we've still got a range of non-tariff barriers, technical barriers in the in the host countries, which remain a barrier to exporting in those countries. And you do need to have professional people on the ground in those countries, in China for example, building relationships and working day to day, face to face with these people to break down these technical barriers to trade.
And the Agriculture Commissioner?
Oh, well, more strength to the ACCC can only be a good thing. I don't agree that the ACCC doesn't have expertise now, but if you want to put a hat on someone, that's a welcome thing. It's not a lot of money, but there is certainly an inequality between the power of the retailers, for example, and many of our farmers and growers. Any cop we can put on the beat to deal with that problem will be a welcome thing.
What about just more generally productivity growth in the farming sector? It has halved over the past decade, according to some estimates. Is there, from what you can see, adequate measures in this white paper to address that? And if not, what would you suggest?
It's certainly true. We've been falling behind on productivity, and we've been falling behind in terms of our share of global market. And many people talk about the dining boom, as do I, but people don't realise that we're falling behind, not winning. And we've got to do something about that. And I haven't seen anything reported with respect to this white paper which would suggest they're doing anything short to medium term on either front. Now, again, I go back to sustainable practices. You know, one of the ways we got productivity gains in the past was the increasing use of chemicals, for example, and fertiliser and herbicides. We've passed that now. We're going into another phase. But we'll see how much is in the white paper about the change of consumer and investment attitudes. About sustainability, I suspect none, and lifting productivity and water retention through moisture in soils and all these things. These are the productivity enhancers in the future, along with, of course, skills, education and training, which is another emission. These are the productivity lifting measures that should have been in a strategic document, which seem to have been forgotten.
Not long left. I just want to ask you about same-sex marriage. You've been agnostic, I suppose, in the past. You have voted against it once before, but you've changed your position since then. What should happen now in the Parliament, in your view? That's
right. 3 years or so ago, I voted against the measure, trying to reflect the majority attitude of my electorate. I hope I got that one right first time around, but I think in the 3 years which has passed, people have moved on. Now I can safely say I'm prepared to support this measure and still hopefully keep faith with my electorate. But Tony Abbott just has to get out of the way here. I mean, forgetting about the issue per se, what he's doing now is that he's using his power over the party room to represent the case of a shrinking minority over the case of a growing majority in the People's House. Now, I couldn't think of anything more democratic. It's clear that if he got out of the way and let people have a free vote, this measure would pass the House of Representatives. So he's using his power over in the party room to bind a majority of people against their will.
So you're confident the numbers
are there? Very bad error on his part. I'm confident that the numbers are there, and they're clearly increasing on a daily basis.
Joel Fitzgibbon, thanks so much for your time today.
That's a pleasure.